Hey everyone! So today is another day of pulling more things from the garden. Basically my tulip bulbs have arrived, which means I need to make room for them by pulling all of these zinnias. So I am, of course, a little sad to be emptying things out, but the zinnias themselves behind me are starting to peter out a bit, so it's not as heartbreaking as if they still looked absolutely beautiful. So the tulips I ordered are from Color Blends, and I think I ordered them in August, but basically when they arrive at your home, they're sending them out to you at the best time for planting based on your growing zone. So I need to get them in, which means I need to clean this bed out. I also have some zinnias over in these two grow bags, which I'm not sure if I'm gonna pull those today or not. There's still some buds on them that might look good, so I don't know, kind of see how it goes. But for sure, getting the sun raised bed empty, I'll show you how I prep for the bulbs, and then I'm probably gonna actually plant the bulbs in the next day or two. So let me take you over and show you what the bed looks like right now. So here's what we got. I've already pulled, there were super petunias and I added gomphrena, so everything around the zinnias has been pulled. And then here's what we're looking like. Again, not actually too terrible, but I mean, definitely more tired than they were before. So I had the Oklahoma pink right there, which I bent, so now it's staring at me, hello. The Zinderella peach, and then queen lime orange up there. So there's still some flowers that look pretty good. So they just decided to start jackhammering on the street. So I popped inside so you can hear me. But basically I'm gonna cut down all the zinnias. I'm going to harvest the ones that still look good for a bouquet. So the last bouquet of those zinnias for the year. I'll chop up the rest, get those gathered up for composting, empty out the bed, add some compost to the bed, and then it should hopefully be ready for the tulip bulbs. So let's go ahead and we'll get started removing all of the zinnias. Actually, one thing first that I almost forgot, and I'm glad I didn't, is I want to measure the zinnias. So last year in the same center raised bed, I grew the Bethany giant zinnias, which are now in one of the 30-gallon grow bags, which are still on the deck. And those, I think they got to my height, which is 5'4", so I think they clocked in at 64 inches. These zinnias are supposed to be shorter, between like 3 to 4 feet. They definitely look shorter to me. The Bethany giant zinnias got very large last year, but these still grew pretty large as well. So I want to take a measurement of the tallest zinnia, just so I know how large they got this year. So we got to, it looks like 55 inches. So just a little bit shorter, a little bit under a foot from last year. So I think the Bethany giant, it's again like 5 to 6 feet. These are 3 to 4 feet. So it seems like it came in at about the max height, which is really exciting for growing them in containers. Now we'll go ahead and get them chopped down. So the bed is empty now of all of the zinnias. I think I'm actually gonna wait and add the compost in when I'm planting the tulips, so I'm not gonna do that today, but I'll take you outside now to see the mess I've made, because that's what I feel like gardening is making a mess, cleaning up, making a mess, cleaning up, just over and over again until the season's over, but that is also part of the fun of it. So there's a few things we're battling outside. It's very windy, which is knocking off the pretty leaves off of the maples, and then there is still some road work going on. I think the jackhammering is done, but there's still some noises, so I'm hoping you'll be able to hear me as I walk you around the deck. So let me go show you my mess. First, we have the empty bed itself. So I've removed the plants, the root balls, and then I went through and just raked through the entire thing. I actually even went like all the way down to the bottom of the raised bed, because something I was reading is that your containers, especially at the bottom, can become more and more compact, which can eventually not be great for your plants. So I wanted to keep everything fluffy, so I went and just dug all around in there to break everything up. Now onto what's on the deck. Here's one bunch of zinnias, another bunch of zinnias, some of the smaller root balls, another small bunch of zinnias, and then back there are the larger zinnia root balls. And I also made what is probably the last of the larger bouquets from my garden with the zinnias that were still pretty enough to use. I also cut some of the giant zinnias and then a few dahlias here as well. The next step now is I'm going to chop up all of the zinnia stems, get those into a trash bag, and then I'm going to cut the stems off the root balls. I brought one in, so I just basically cut the stem right above the root ball, and that's just so it doesn't poke a hole in the trash bag. So that's happened to me before. That's why I try to cut things kind of as small as possible so that I'm not tearing holes as I'm carrying the trash bag down. And again, this is Chicago specific, but I would encourage you to look up if there's something similar in your city. But we have 311 where you can request specifically yard/garden waste pickup, and then the city takes it to compost it. If my compost was larger, the composter that I have, I would definitely throw the stuff in there. So I think next year, assuming the composting goes well, which I'll have an update pretty soon here just on kind of how it's going, but I think I can definitely use a larger one or a 2-chamber one for next year, because I definitely produce more garden waste than I have space for compost. So it's a few days later now. Basically, it started to rain before I was able to clean up all of the zinnias that I pulled. And then we were out of town, so now it's been a couple days, but that isn't really abnormal for me to kind of cut something down the garden and leave it there. I don't always get things cleaned up the same day. So what I'm gonna do now is just continue on and show you kind of how I clean up when I pull out some plants and get it all kind of ready to go downstairs. I have my garbage can here ready, and that's where I'm gonna chop this up, put it in here, and something I do, because I've made this mistake before, is as I'm kind of adding the plant waste to the garbage can, I'll lift it up and make sure it's still at a weight I can carry, because I have overloaded these and then struggled to get them downstairs before. So I like to make sure that it is possible for me to carry this through the house and down. So starting off with one of the zinnia plants, I basically just go through and kind of chop it down to, I'd say maybe like, I don't know, pieces this large, and toss them in the bag. And the reason why I do smaller pieces is because when they're longer, it's very easy for them to tear a hole in the bag, which I've also had probably more instances of that happening than I should have before I learned how to do this without tearing a hole in the bag. Because what'll happen is I have to carry these down through the house to get them out to the back where they'll be picked up by the city for composting. So if there's a hole in it, that kind of liquefied garden waste is dripping out through the house. So luckily that hasn't happened this year, but it has happened years in the past. But it is something I have learned. So I'm just gonna keep chopping up the zinnias, tossing them in there, and then once I feel like it's full enough, I will go ahead and tie this up and get another bag, because I don't think it's all gonna be able to fit in here for me to carry. Now for the root ball and the stems, I basically do a similar thing. So I left part of the stem on when I was cutting them down just so I could pull them out of the bed easily. But now I'll just kind of cut right next to the root ball and cut the stem off. And then that way, again, the stem isn't kind of protruding as much as it would if I just put this whole thing in the trash bag. All done putting the garden waste in the trash bags, I am always left with piles of dirt and debris around the deck, but that is why I have a broom in the garden. So I basically just sweep all of this up either into a pile on the deck, or this I might sweep into like an empty pot and then just toss it somewhere else in either a grow bag or a raised bed. And just like that, everything is cleaned up, which means that it'll probably be messy again by tomorrow. Most of the dirt I just sweeped back in here, a little bit in that bag, and then this bed is now going to be planted with bulbs in the next few days, so I will definitely show you that process as well. Really excited to have, I think, even more bulbs in this bed than I planted last year. And while we're out here, I just want to show how pretty the fall bed looks right now, especially with the tree behind it, even though it is slowly starting to lose its leaves up there. So that is everything for this video. It does always feel a little bit nice to have another area kind of like cleaned up and tidied. I'm definitely not the tidiest gardener ever, but it doesn't take me long to clean up the messes that I make. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.